I have here the Sony A7 V, which is a really interesting camera because it offers so many improvements over the predecessor, the A7 IV. And with a new partially stacked sensor, a blackout-free viewfinder, a frame rate up to 30 frames per second, an improved autofocus, and much more. It just feels like a very good all-rounder, and I've been using it for around 2 weeks now and want to share my experiences. There's a lot of things that I really like about the camera and also a few things that were annoying me, so I want to talk about that. And please apologize if my voice is a bit weird. It looks like I was not dealing with the snow and the rain in the past days as well as the Sony A7 V did. Regarding the body and the handling, if you have been using any Sony full-frame cameras in the last few years, you will be immediately familiar with the design. I really like that we have a lot of buttons that we can customize very freely. I don't know any other manufacturer that offers that level of customization, which I really enjoy. We have the 4 different wheels or dials that we can use to change different camera settings. The only thing I sometimes wish if there would be a small little shoulder display on Sony cameras, but I'm happy to have these 4 different dials. What really changed compared to the A7 IV is the monitor. First of all, it has a higher resolution now, and this new design that we already know from the A7R V, the A1 II, and the A9 III, and I still think that this is the best designed monitor on any mirrorless camera at the moment. I really wish Nikon and Canon would also implement this. Now, speaking of the rear screen, I also want to talk about the viewfinder. We have a 0.78 magnification, which sits right between the Nikon Z6 III and the Canon R6 III, and a resolution of 3.7 million dots, which is, in my opinion, perfectly adequate. And what I really enjoy is it's a blackout-free viewfinder, something we unfortunately don't have with the Canon R6 III, and it really makes it much easier to kind of follow some fast-flying birds that also change the direction rather quickly. Here on the side we have 2 different card slots. You can put SD cards in both of them, but I would really not recommend this. I will tell you later why. And the upper one also works as kind of a dual slot where you can also put a CF Express Type A card, which just offers a much faster write speed. As in terms of battery, it still uses the same NP-FZ100 battery, but compared to any other Sony camera I have used before, the battery life is much improved. Also much better than, for example, a Nikon Z6 III or Canon R6 III for that matter. And for all these cameras that have, like, I would call it small battery, that don't have an integrated battery grip, I think this is the one with the best battery life I have ever used. So I was very happy about that. I didn't need to change the batteries a lot at all. I mean, often it was enough for a whole morning, even with temperatures well below the freezing point. At the heart of the camera we have a 33 megapixel partially stacked sensor, so same resolution as the A7 IV, but now with this partially stacked sensor it just means that rolling shutter is not so much of an issue anymore. And in fact, for most situations like flying ducks, flying herons, and even flying songbirds such as the spotted nutcracker, I had no issues with rolling shutter at all. For some smaller songbirds like some tits or finches that were flying, there I saw it a little bit in the wings, but it was still usable in my opinion, and these are the rather extreme cases. Where I really noticed it on a regular basis was when let's say a duck or another bird that was flying a bit faster was flying parallel with me, and I was kind of following the bird, taking a series of shots, and I had some vertical elements in the background like trees or reeds. Then you could see how they started to tilt, something we also have with the Nikon Z6 III or Canon R6 III, by the way. But usually I try to avoid these kind of situations anyway, because whether they are crooked or straight, I think these vertical elements usually don't look so nice in the picture. So in fact, in the end of the day, I have never used the mechanical shutter on this camera because it was really not an issue. In terms of the autofocus, I think of course this new AI chip helps, but probably this new sensor with the faster readout also helps to improve the autofocus performance. So the detection is notably better than with the A7 IV or also with an old A1. I could not do a direct comparison to the A1 Mark II at this point, unfortunately, but if I compare it a bit to Nikon and Canon, it's not there yet. The detection is still better on the Nikon Z6 III and much better on the Canon R6 III, unfortunately. But you can work with it. You just need to change the autofocus settings a bit more often, sometimes go to a smaller field without the tracking activated, and then it works fine. Where the camera really shines is in the tracking afterwards. Once it has locked onto the subject, I feel like it doesn't let go. There were some situations when a small and fast flying bird was flying directly towards me, where even my much more expensive Canon R1 was struggling, and the A7 V handles these situations much better. So overall, I think it's a very good autofocus system. It has its weaknesses and its strengths, such as just like every other autofocus system, and you just need to learn how to play with it and find the right settings for the right situation. I think the biggest weakness of this camera is actually the buffer. So if you shoot in uncompressed RAW, you get around 1 second before the buffer fills. And this is really not much. In Sony's defense, if the buffer fills, the camera doesn't stop shooting completely, it just reduces the frame rate, but still it's a bit annoying to only have it for 1 second. And of course you could switch to the compressed RAW, something that I did in the beginning. When I set the camera up, I immediately selected the compressed RAW, only to find out a day later that at the moment of the recording of this video, neither Lightroom, Capture One or Luminar Neo are supporting the compressed RAW. So I needed to switch to the uncompressed RAW, and I cannot show all the pictures that I took with this camera over the last 2 weeks. So I think it's a question of time, matter of time. At some point, all these software will probably support the compressed RAW, and then the buffer is better. Then it's around 3 seconds, which is still not great, especially if you compare with Canon R6 III and Nikon Z6 III that can do more than 8 seconds of continuous shooting in the fastest frame rate. But I think with this I can work. This 1 second is really a bit limiting, especially if you also activate the pre-capture, because then if you have half a second pre-capture, you can only do half a second of proper shooting afterwards. So what I recommend there is really just use the pre-capture if you think you need it, and also maybe shorten the pre-capture time a bit. I put mine to 0.3 seconds, maybe even 0.2 seconds work. You just need to figure this a bit out for yourself. In terms of pre-capture, I think it's a very good implementation. You can activate and deactivate it with a touch of a button. You can customize, as I just mentioned, between 0.03 and 1 second how long the pre-capture should be. You can also decide if the pre-capture should be activated only with the shutter button or also with the AF on button, and it works very reliable. And in fact, it's the pre-capture system that I like most of all the camera systems that I have tried so far, from Nikon, Canon and OM System. I think the Sony one is clearly the best implementation at the moment. In terms of video, also many things have improved. We can now, first of all, shoot in S-Log, which just gives us more dynamic range and more flexibility in post-production. And it's also possible to record 4K 60 frames per second without having a crop. And with 4K 120, you can still shoot just with a crop there. I also felt that the image stabilization in video mode was improved notably over the A7 IV or also the original A1. However, it's still nowhere close to modern Canon cameras such as the R6 III, and even less Nikon cameras such as the Nikon Z6 III. And you just notice this if you're filming handheld with a long telephoto lens like a 400-8 or 600mm f4. So there for the Sony, I would still try to find a place where you can kind of put down the lens, because handheld it's really tricky to get stable footage over a bit a longer period, in my opinion. Overall, I think the A7 V is a really good upgrade from the A7 IV, and it's an almost perfect all-rounder. It has very few weaknesses, and I think it really caught up to the Canon R6 Mark III that was announced a little bit before. Is it better than the R6 Mark III? I'm not sure. I think both have their strengths and weaknesses. I think overall they're on a pretty similar level, both price-wise and feature-wise. And usually I think if you're just already invested in a system, it makes sense to stay in this system. Both cameras will get the job done. In the end, it matters that you set them up properly, and also that you know what you're doing behind the camera. And I think if somebody asks me which Sony full frame camera I can recommend at the moment for wildlife, bird photography, like an all-round camera that is not too expensive, I would easily recommend the A7 V. I think at the moment it's the best, like, bang for the buck in the Sony universe. If you want to pick up this camera, I put an affiliate link below. With buying over this link, you would just support my channel. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. Also, I'm happy to hear about your experience with the camera, and then hopefully see you in the next video.